Morning.
Okay, I'll do that again. It's 8:30 on June 21st. Happy solstice, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order. Good morning. So I think we have a number of people online and one here in person with us. So we'll open up with a general public comment. Any comments? Joe Cohen.
Yeah, so thank you, Brian.
Make sure you speak up if you would.
Yeah, okay, guys, I assume you can hear me. I have listened, I was listening to what people are saying in the community about the land bank renewal. I've done some thinking. I'm going to offer a suggestion to the commission. I understand you're not going to make a decision today, but here's the thought. No one has a lease on life. We all have a finite time on the planet. An insurance agent once said to me, you don't have a lease on life. That's why you should buy insurance. You need money at the end of their life to ensure the health of your family. The land bank has a unique proposition. It has 12-year leases on its life. At the end of that time, your constituents have to decide, are we going to let you live? You also have a stewardship mandate that says you need to be able at any point in time to steward those properties in perpetuity. So here's my suggestion. I think it's reasonable to ask the commission to do an estimate of where we will be in 2038, 12, 14 years from now, in terms of the annual financial requirements for stewardship. And I realize 14 years is almost impossible to nail it. You can probably get within plus or minus 20%, but it's a starting point. And once you know, for example, if you knew that it costs $2 million a year to steward the properties you now have, you can say what size fund or endowment do we need? And maybe you need 50 million at 4% interest per year to generate the $2 million for stewardship. Then you go back and ask the question, and this is the second request, what would we have to fund every year to get to that $50 million goal? So it's really a request to do two things. One, do an assessment, come up with a number that's in the ballpark, and then ask what the funding requirement is. I think if you do that, the public support for the continuance will be increased because people will say, oh, they really are thinking about not just one of the mandates, acquisition, but the stewardship mandate, which goes for perpetuity. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, any other public comments? Hear none. Okay, we'll continue. Oh, I see Erin is online too, perhaps on her way. So let's continue then with the approval of the minutes from our last meeting on May 17th. Any comments from commissioners? I'm seeing head shaking, no comments. I have a couple, and I'm going to have to go back and find them. Sorry, give me a moment. Well, I guess I just highlighted a couple of things for myself, my own interest. But going down to Tanya's outreach and communications report, on page 3, the first sentence, Tanya reported on the communications subcommittee focused on the last 3 strategies from the strategic plan. My suggestion is that we tell what are those strategies. I think, Tanya, you meant because under the communications goal, and the strategies were basically communicate better through regular print and media postings. What were the other two? Went back and looked and made a note. Let's see. Address misinformation that has been out there in the community, and I think we have been doing that, and utilize forms of communication, including print media and so on. So I just suggest we add those to the minutes to make it clear what you were talking about. And that's really all I have. Second chance, anybody else? Okay, see more head shaking. Okay, and I see Vicki Edwards here and ready with a partner report from the Preservation Trust. Vicki, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to provide an update. My name is Vicki Edwards. I'm the Conservation Director at the San Juan Preservation Trust. Just have a couple of updates for you all. The first one being the Katy Mountain Trail opening celebration on June 15th. I attended that celebration with our Director of Philanthropy, Kristen Buckley, and just want to thank the Land Bank staff for inviting us and the successfulness of that celebration. I'm not going to go into any detail on that outside of Kristen had estimated 70 people attended and folks were super excited. So I'm curious to hear what your numbers will be later when you provide your update, Tanya. But just a wonderful opening, and we look forward to collaborating on additional partner project celebrations later this summer. Our next update is on the North Shore project. As you all know, our annual summer social is at the North Shore on Orcas Island, and that'll be July 20th from 1 to 4 o'clock. We'll have more details to share. Kristen Buckley is working through those plans now. Just want to thank Peter for coordinating with Kristen on that, and thanks to Lincoln for agreeing to attend to provide remarks. We really appreciate it and look forward to another successful gathering at the North Shore, and fingers crossed that the Tillicum is running, because unfortunately that was not the case for the Katy Mountain celebration. So we'll be hopeful that we'll be able to get as many folks over to Orcas as possible. Last meeting, I had mentioned that Kathleen Foley-Lewis, our project lead on the North Shore Conservation Easement, she was hoping to have that draft conservation easement to the county by the end of this month, but now that's been bumped a month. We're probably looking at mid-July to late July. That still puts us well ahead of schedule, but I just wanted to share that with Peter and Lincoln, so you're aware that that'll be coming your way very soon, and sometime in July. And then lastly, wanted to share that, as I'd mentioned at the last meeting, Craig Canine, our Director of Communications and Outreach, is retiring, unfortunately, but we are fortunate that Kelvin Baker has started with us. He started on June 10th, and he's taken over for Craig. Craig will be training him through the end of this month before he leaves us. And so Kelvin will be a great addition to our team and will be a great contact for you, Tanya. And if you'd like to learn more about Kelvin, please check out our website to learn more. He had submitted a video as part of his job application that is just amazing and brings a really impressive skill set to the organization that we can really see being advantageous for ongoing and future partner projects that we work on. So excited to bring Kelvin into all of our work with you all. And that's all the updates I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Vicki. One question, Vicki, for the benefit of the public attending and myself. Would you repeat what you said about the summer social at the North Shore? Exactly when and where? And I've forgotten, is there a pre-registration for it?
Yeah, thanks for those questions, Brian. And so, yes, it is July 20th from 1 to 4. And Kristen is working on possible shuttle service coming in from the Orcas Ferry Terminal. So folks will just be able to walk on and take the shuttle to the North Shore property. That'll help reduce the amount of traffic there. And then Lincoln is providing comments on behalf of the Land Bank, and many thanks. And we'll probably have tours, maybe asking for a little assistance, Peter, if you're available. And there'll be some more details as well. We'll have some tables set up and all that good stuff, and some treats and snacks. Regarding registration, it is my understanding that we will ask for pre-registration, knowing though that not everyone will register, but it'll give us an idea as to how many shuttles that we'll need to be able to transport folks. So I'll share more on that, Brian. Once I receive it, I'll actually send it out to Tanya so she can share it with you all.
That sounds great. Thanks, Vicki.
You're
Looking
welcome.
forward to it.
Likewise. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, next we have our council update with Council Member Minnie. Good morning, Christine.
Good morning. TGIF, as I always say, because truly, TGIF. Let's see, it feels like I haven't been here in some time, but I just missed last month. I was away at a conference. It feels like an eternity. Here I am, nevertheless, this month. I have some fun updates. The first of which, San Juan County released its annual notice of funds available for the home fund for the 2024 funding round. As always, eligible recipients are nonprofit agencies, housing authorities, private for-profit affordable housing providers, and public agencies. This year, the council made $2.2 million available. Those awards will be expected to be announced by council in late fall. $2.2 million sounds like so much money. But I've been doing this long enough to know that it's actually just the smallest bit of a push in the right direction for affordable housing. So we'll see what the applicants bring forward. The County Parks, Recreation and Fair Department is beginning to rebuild, or is going to begin rebuilding, the Lopez Island Skate Park. Construction will begin, I think as early as next week, maybe, which will result in a 6,300 square foot skate park, which will take an estimated 4 months to complete. The new skate park will be a concrete skate park, which will be a significant step up, because as I understand it, the skate park, which I have actually not seen in person, is plywood. I don't even know how they do that. Yeah. So anyway, it's a little bit over 10 years old and it is failing. So we have invested a significant amount to create a skate park that will be enjoyed for some time to come. In the similar vein of restoration, the county is taking steps to protect the historic courthouse. After a 2022 seismic study, it was deemed that the building is structurally insufficient, and the county is seeking state grant funding to protect and preserve the historic portion, which is, just that front portion that houses the PA, and some of district court staff. And which has been on the historic register since 1984 after being built in 1906. Anyway, Washington State has a program that does provide funding through a grant funding, and it is very specific to the preservation of historic courthouses. We did try this 2 years ago and unfortunately fell just below the chosen courthouses. So this time around, we're hopeful that we might actually find ourselves in the position to be able to receive grant funding. This one's really important. And if you haven't seen this yet, I'm glad that you're here today. As of June 18th, the Washington State Department of Health has closed all recreational shellfish harvesting in San Juan County due to unsafe levels of paralytic shellfish poison. And this includes clams, geoducks, scallops, mussels, oysters, and snails. Don't eat the snails. Lastly, in other big news, a county manager has been hired. The tentative start date for Jessica Hudson is July 15th. I say tentative, I guess, because it's very ambitious, and I'm hopeful that she'll be here, and that's not very far away. So we'll see what happens. Jessica will be responsible for serving as staff liaison to council, overseeing county department operations, managing the budget, and about 10,332 other things. Jessica Hudson, is currently the director of Fairfax County Public Library in Virginia, where she oversees a system of 23 public facilities, a budget of $35 million, and 550 staff. Jessica has a bachelor's degree in finance, a master's in library science, and a master's in public administration, as well as completing a fellowship in county senior executive leadership from the California State Association of Counties. So I really look forward to Jessica coming on board. We all know that we are in need, and I hope that that's the beginning of something fantastic. Council will be meeting on Shaw Island July 23rd. The place and time is still to be decided or announced. And okay, this is really lastly, that I am sorry to say that I did miss the Katy Mountain Preserve open house. I was on the peninsula for my niece's wedding.
Okay. A lot of news. Thank you very much, Councilmember Minnie.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay. If there are no questions for Christine, we'll proceed to commissioners' reports. And I don't see any. Marilyn, good morning. Marilyn?
Good morning. I just wanted to report that I attended the Katy Mountain opening. It was really, really a beautiful event. Everybody there was so pleased. It was great to see Dennis Schaefer there with Amy, his wife, who was instrumental in starting that project. So Lincoln reminds me. And I just want to say that I hope all the commissioners get an opportunity to get out there and take a walk. I've just heard side conversations in the community in the last few days about people talking about it. And it's a beautiful trail. It makes you so proud of the work that our stewards do. I was just very impressed. So I hope everybody has a chance to go. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Anne Marie.
Yes, I just wanted to give a shout out to Tyler. I was able to participate in the tour with the Canoe Journey participants of the Coho Preserve, and he really did a great job and was very patient with all of us and our questions. And interestingly enough, earlier this week, I met with the environmental action team here on Orcas, and they're really concerned about the water flows in the Coho Preserve. So I know that'll be an issue that I'll be talking with Lincoln about. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Anne Marie. And I think that your part in the canoe journey was not mentioned as well as Jenny DeGroot's part in, along with Tyler, in giving a tour of the Coho Preserve and specifically the land bank's efforts to restore salmon runs in there. So great job and thanks to all. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Tim, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Tim, good morning. Tim, you're muted. Tim,
There we go.
there you go.
Okay, it was another busy month. Among other commissioners, I attended the canoe journey here on Lopez. That was really enjoyable and really deeply meaningful too. It was well worth going to. Also went to the agricultural organizations get together on San Juan Island with Peggy, and that was energizing. There were about 40 people there from organizations dealing with agriculture, and it got people inspired, and we'll see where it goes from here. And then lastly, just a couple of days ago, I attended the Clean Water Advisory Committee meeting, hoping to hear good news about the water flows in Cascade Creek leading to the Coho Preserve. There was a brief mention, but that was about it. Still, it was worth going to the meeting just to see the players and hear what they were concerned with. They dealt largely with the water element for the comprehensive plan going ahead. So not a lot about Coho. There was a brief mention of the concrete batch plant that has applied to run operations above the Beaverton Marsh Preserve and how that might affect water supplies. All right, that's it for me.
All right, thanks, Tim. Yeah, I hope that, and I'm glad, Tim, that you're following the water situation in Cascade Creek and at the Coho Preserve. I know that both Peter and Jenny DeGroot have been in touch with those folks and are working hard on it, but with the recent change in ownership, I think everything's a bit up in the air for a while. So we'll just keep on it and hope for the best. I will just chime in with you and Anne Marie on the canoe journey too. I think it was a great success on Orcas Island anyway, and it sounds like it was on Lopez as well. It was really a fun gathering and fun to see the enthusiasm of the Lummi people and others who participated with them. It was really successful. We had a little table out there along with a few others, but the whole event was on Orcas. Gosh, I think that there were certainly over 100 people there, and good music, great food, very well organized. So I'm glad that it was something that we were involved in, and I think we should continue to do that in the future. So thanks to all of you who participated in that. Good relations. Okay. Anybody else? Last call. No? Okay, thank you. Director's report. Lincoln?
All right, thank you. Good to be on Orcas Island this morning. It did not work out, unfortunately. So here we are. I am in the office in Friday Harbor. And I've got a couple of things queued up for you. I'm going to share my screen. It's been a while since I've had to do this, actually. So we'll see how this goes. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Great. This is kind of a repeat. I did a presentation for the League of Women Voters last week on what we're doing to try and deal with the climate change situation. So I'm going to run through this presentation for you all as well, because I think it was just a good opportunity to pull together into one place, what we are doing. And the slide actually starts that picture. I'll start with mentioning that I was in Connecticut earlier this month, and one of the things that struck me was how much lawn there is driving around Connecticut. It's just pretty astonishing. And I was imagining how much fossil fuels we are using to take care of these lawns. Well, this slide is actually outside here in the office. It doesn't quite look like this right now, but this is a meadow, courtesy of the Sailor Seeds Nursery. We put together this kind of demonstration meadow, and we're working on a guide actually to help people do these kinds of things on their own property. We get a lot of questions, and we felt that it just made a lot of sense to actually pull a guide together that we can just distribute to people. There seems to be quite a bit of interest in it. So this kind of thing saves a lot of time and energy and a lot of fossil fuel. But I'll move along. This is just my introductory slide, because I always want to start these presentations to other organizations so that they have a clear understanding of who we are. And this has our projected openings. As we've heard, we did an opening a couple weeks ago now, I guess, or when was it? Last week at Katy Mountain, which it's been a long time in coming. Marilyn mentioned Dennis Schaefer being there. He did the first acquisition for that project in 2003. So it sometimes takes a while, but we get it done. Next up will be that Beaverton Marsh Preserve trail opening from Lindy Park. We are going to have contractors out there next week working on that. And then later in September, North Shore, and hopefully early October, the Watmow Head property. So I'm just going to move along here. Okay, so the first thing about climate change is to really have a better understanding of what's going on. And this is really what's happening. So we know our summers are getting hotter and drier. We've got issues with water availability. We have still a really high potential for increasing the number of residences in the county. And when you go through the literature and try and figure out, there are lots of estimates about what it takes to build a house. This is I think, fairly conservative estimate. But each house, just getting the materials there, harvesting wood, all of what goes into building a house emits roughly 30 tons of carbon dioxide. So a lot of potential problems there for us. And development does continue really at a record-breaking pace. All fires, this is something that we really need to understand. We tend to think about fires in the West as things that happen on big pieces of public land where there's utility lines crossing and things like that. Well, here, since we have 83% of the county in private land ownership, that's just not what happens here. Almost all of our fires are either on private property, people letting burn piles get away or doing various things on their own property, or they're along roadsides, people sparking from mowing. That's a big originator of fires. But it's a definite concern, particularly as we get hotter and drier. Okay, so we have at least several thousand acres of forests that need active management. I think that's a pretty accurate figure. And by that, I mean forests that aren't particularly healthy, and we're going to need to address. Last, many of our farm fields are in poor condition and under threat from development, and I will revisit that also. Okay, so what are our priorities? We've got three. One, protecting key properties to limit sprawl. Second, managing forests to reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire and improve forest health. I would actually reverse those. In that having healthy forests is really what will reduce the risk of having catastrophic wildfire, but I'll revisit that in a bit. And last, carbon sequestration on agricultural lands and in wetland areas. So just moving down this list, protecting key properties to limit sprawl. I think it's important for us to really look at the context here. So everything that's colored on this map, and I apologize for the different colors as I assembled this through Polaris, and it took me several tries. So I didn't quite get the colors all matched up, but anything that's colored is what is within what I'm calling the development matrix. And that means it's smaller properties. Typically, the properties are developed, or they are undeveloped lots, but within that context, surrounded by development or adjacent to it. And basically, those are the areas that are not really, they're just not eligible for any conservation efforts. They're, for all intents and purposes, developed or almost developed. And that's a lot of our landscape, really. On the three largest islands, it's 65% of our landscape, which fit into that development matrix. So what we have to work with when we're trying to conserve areas is that remainder, that 35%. And that's basically what we're limited to. So protection of key areas to help ensure that development only happens where it makes sense. So what we're trying to do is keep intact, healthy natural areas. And we're also looking to bolster existing public lands, increase the adaptive ability of forests and the wildlife that depend on them, all in the context of what we're anticipating happening in climate change. So one of the tools we've used, we've got a lot of things that go into determining what's appropriate or what's desirable to conserve. But this is built off of an analysis the Nature Conservancy did, and it's their resilient lands analysis. I think you all have seen this before, but it's helpful to go over it again. And you can see the dark blue are the most resilient areas. And by that, what's meant is those places it's anticipated will be best able to handle the climate change as it happens. And what goes into that are having contiguous natural areas of a certain extent, topographic diversity. A lot of what you're seeing there, Moran on the upper right, and then the center part of San Juan. Those also tend to be where we've got the highest precipitation. But that topographic diversity means, plants that may exist on south-facing slopes have the opportunity to potentially shift upward and over as the climate continues to change. So focusing on those areas really is important, trying to build those conservation areas which will best withstand climate change. And that's what leads to this map, which is priority areas for forest and watershed conservation. can see what we're talking about. Looking at Orcas first, we've got the areas around Turtleback, where we still have some very intact forest lands and in larger ownerships, and that we've got some good opportunities there, hopefully down the road. And also areas south of Moran, and we've got that spot on the middle lobe there. Something to really think about. On San Juan, the big one is obviously on the northern part of the island. Most of that is the Roche Harbor Highlands property. You can see Katy Mountain there to the south, the green area, and then English Camp, which is located to the west of that spot. But we have other spots around the islands which are really important. Lopez, you can see the area around Lopez Hill to the south there is something that's important. And also really southeastern Lopez has some key places. The Center Valley there on Lopez is a key conservation area. It's not really in this category because it's mostly agricultural, but we have agricultural priorities as well. And I'll come back to that in a bit. But this is what we're really focused on as our #1 strategy, just preserving areas which are important, which are more resilient, and trying to steer development away from those places. Okay, managing forests to reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire and improve forest health. It's pretty clear that the situation, the context is changing quite a bit, and even areas on the west side of the Cascades are more susceptible to fire. We're very fortunate that we don't live in east of the Cascades or in other forested areas on the mainland, particularly toward the mountains, across the mountains, where they have a significantly higher risk of a catastrophic wildfire, but it's headed our way. I think the good news is that we have an opportunity to really get in and manage our forests before the situation gets totally out of control. So that's what we're aiming to do here. And what I mean by active forest management pretty much comes down to this activity, which is thinning. And you can see what we're trying to address here, that we've got a lot of forests, as you see in the background of those two lower photos, that really aren't terribly healthy. You've got a lot of stems, small unhealthy trees, not a lot of living branches on them, and really those areas are going to be much more prone to wildfire if we actually have a serious wildfire. And so the way to address that is to thin them and try and create a context where we have healthier trees and we have a more diverse ground cover, understory. And we've been working hard on this. You can see that one of your commissioners in a photograph there, looking very excited. Thank you, Marilyn. What we do here, thinning, leads to some questions about what we do with all of this material, because we've got a lot of it. Some of it is stacked, like you see there in the middle, really trying to create kind of a large, coarse woody debris is what you would call it in an ecological context. So simulate a large tree being down, and bundling it also helps protect that from being more susceptible to burning, but really important for wildlife and for sequestering carbon on the forest floor. So what have we accomplished? We've thinned about 130 acres to this point on Turtleback, Mount Grant, and Katy Mountain. And this is a really great slide because you can see what we're talking about. In the foreground is the after, and in the background is the before, or areas that we just haven't gotten to yet. So this is a critical activity for us. Why is it important to have healthy forests, healthy trees in particular? Well, they're going to sequester a lot of carbon. And so here's an estimate of a hectare of Douglas fir forest being able to sequester over 5 tons of carbon dioxide per year. So that's really what we're working toward. If you have an unhealthy forest, and particularly if it burns, you're just going to be emitting tons and tons of carbon into the atmosphere. So this is really more what you want. That's what we're working toward. What we do with the rest of the material, we have a lot of smaller diameter material that ends up in piles. Some of those we leave as wildlife refugia, but we also burn those piles, and we try to do what are called conservation burns, where we're creating biochar or charcoal. And that means it's a different way of having a burn pile where you're burning from the top down, extinguishing it and getting this charcoal, which locks up a lot of carbon. And so far, and this is a pretty rough estimate, but we've had probably, I would say, 1,000 burn piles. And coming from the Islands Conservation Corps, we've got one of those folks working on an estimate of how much carbon we sequestered. So 85 cubic yards of biochar, which amounts to 16 tons of carbon equivalent. We're hoping with the grant that we've applied for to be able to get some mobile kilns, which would really dramatically increase our efficiency in converting these to biochar and reduce the amount that's lost in the combustion process. Okay, love to share these kinds of slides. You know, we have lots of people out there working. It's not all work. And so this is a Youth Conservation Corps slide. We've certainly had them out there. We always have one of these goofy photos. But anyway, just something to point out that we have had in the Conservation Corps program now about 300 kids who've passed through that. So they have fun, they do some work for us, but anyway, we've got a lot of other crews and contractors working in these projects too. So once we're done with the burning, then comes the restoration phase. So what you're seeing here is plants that came from the Salish Seeds Nursery, and the right is photos of the nursery itself. So we're producing a lot of plants and materials coming out of that and putting them back on the ground, especially on these burned over areas, these small burn pile areas, really just to try and increase the floral diversity that we've got on the ground. So this past year, the nursery produced 4,700 plants and plugs, 30 pounds of seed. Eliza always loves to use the pounds of seed figure. Just trust me when I tell you that that's a huge amount of seed. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a phenomenal amount of seed. And something else that happened last year, separate from the nursery, was a huge mast year for Gary Oaks, which really are a keystone species. Lots of other organisms depend on Gary Oaks. So there were a lot of acorns produced, and we had a big cadre of people who are very, very interested in collecting acorns and planting them. And we pulled them together and sent them out as widely as we could into places which we think will host Gary Oaks. So we planted about 7,000 acorns, and we'll see what happens. We'll be caging some of the ones that have come up to try and eliminate the potential for them to be browsed or killed by deer browse. Okay, and this is really the wildlife shot. You've seen this before, but it's really key thing for people to understand, you know, that we have these wide-ranging species, so we need to protect a good bit of habitat in order to save these things. And it's not just wide ranging, not just things like the pileated woodpecker or the great horned owl, which have hundreds of acres of home range, but also species that have very particular requirements. So you can see the salamander on the lower left there, obviously dependent on wetland areas, bluebirds, more open areas, and then we've got the whole relationship of the terrestrial environment to the marine. So the salmon is also an issue for us with having a lot of juvenile salmon coming through the San Juans. They're quite dependent. At least 30% of their diet is coming from terrestrial sources. So what we do on the land really matters if we want to conserve salmon. Okay, carbon sequestration on agricultural lands. So first of all, yes, we have agricultural conservation priorities. You can see those outlined here. See the Center Valley and Lopez pop up as one of the key places. But we still have a number of places, particularly on San Juan, which really are vulnerable and could be developed. So we'll be working toward doing conservation easements in these areas or other areas that pop up. Just critical to make sure that lands that are in agricultural stay in agriculture and are not developed. So that's one of our clear priorities in this area. Of the land that we have, we've got about 400 acres, which is leased to farmers, working to increase that. We've been talking about this lease, potential lease with the Grange here in San Juan, which is really will be a very interesting project. But I think our goal really here has been, I mean, number one, we got into the leasing business to try and remove the cost of land from the equation for farmers. But we also want to move it toward a different kind of agriculture, away from what you might think is the traditional growing hay or doing some grazing, toward doing more diverse activities and grazing differently. Just trying to convert the use into a context which will be as healthy as possible. If we're moving toward different kinds of pastures where it's more of a regenerative approach, and they're going to have deeper root systems. That's also going to be a good carbon sink going forward if we have healthier pastures out there. So something for us to keep working on, but trying to go in this direction of having more diverse leases on our properties. And then I've told you a bit about this, so I'm going to tell you a bit more. Basalt. Why do we care about basalt? Well, it's not just because I've become obsessed with basalt, but that's part of it. So I'll start at the beginning. Basalt is a really interesting rock, and we've got tons and tons of it. And this is why, basically, that 17 million years ago, we had these massive basalt flows coming out of volcanoes and flooding over this incredible extent of Washington State over 11 million years. So we have 50,000 cubic miles of basalt flooded across the Pacific Northwest. Well, why do we care? Well, it turns out that basalt and other silicate rocks have this very interesting characteristic that if you grind them up, they actively remove carbon out of the atmosphere. So this has become of more and more interest, and we've managed to find a partner in the Yale Center for Natural Carbon Capture, and they're going to be providing us with a significant amount of basalt to use on our properties and also make available to other farms. So the potential for this is quite enormous, really, with the possibility of removing 2 to 4 billion metric tons of carbon globally on an annual basis. Yeah, Just for comparison, I think the US emits about 6.4 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide this year or annually. So it's a significant, this could be a really significant piece in trying to address climate change. And this is how the process works, basically, that you have rain that falls. It's slightly acidic. As it comes down and hits the rock, there's a chemical reaction which turns that rock into carbonates. And one of the things, the second benefit of using basalt or silicate rocks on farm fields in particular is that it does increase the productivity of farm fields. I think the estimates, it depends on what field you're talking about and where it is in the world, but you can get this good 10 to perhaps 20% increase in yields by applying silicate rock to them. And then the last benefit is the fact that as this works its way through the system, these carbonates are base or alkaline, and they get into the marine environment. One of our huge issues with climate change is that as the oceans absorb more and more carbon dioxide, they get more and more acidic. And so this has the potential to combat that, really, to try and help reverse this issue that we've got with ocean acidification. Obviously, that will take a phenomenal amount of material to put a dent in, but this is, it's definitely a huge benefit if we can get it going. So what we're doing is arranging for a barge load of basalt to come here. Probably we'll have it delivered to Jackson Beach on San Juan, and maybe splitting that with the load going over to Lopez because they have a barge landing there as well, which we can use. We're hoping to have this done in September, to have 6,000 tons of basalt. This is not really basalt. I was just looking for a good, good photo to show you what we might be talking about. But it's a significant amount of rock, and what it means for us is that we have the potential to put it on perhaps up to about 500 acres. And if we were able to do that, it's going to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So 3 to 4 tons per hectare, 2 tons per acre. So we've got the potential, to go up to maybe pulling 1,000 tons of carbon dioxide a year out of the atmosphere by working in this area. So it's something, kind of our last bit of what we're trying to do to address carbon climate change, rather. And so just a shot, this is what we're hoping for, this incredible mosaic of what we are in the islands, farm fields, forests, and ocean or Salish Sea. And I'm going to stop sharing to see if anybody has any comments, questions on this part, and then I'll move into the next presentation, which is really going to be fairly brief, talking about our acquisition costs.
Okay, any questions, comments from the commissioners? Peggy?
So I really appreciate that presentation about the basalt. And as I think before, I'm curious about the benefits versus the impacts, because all of that burning is not necessarily beneficial. Am I correct on that? But you make it sound that the benefits far outweigh the impacts.
Are you talking about the biochar part of this?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a question of how efficiently you can do it. So you're definitely releasing carbon dioxide when you're burning, along with other pollutants, which is why you want to do that as efficiently as possible. And with these kilns, that's what we're trying to do, is minimize the amount of smoke and particulates and carbon dioxide that's coming out of that process and maximizing how much we can lock up in the form of biochar. So that's, you know, we can go over figures over
No.
about what's released or what's not. I'm not prepared to do that today, but it's a good question.
And then I have another question about the basalt. I assume or trust that we're working also in partnership with the Conservation District to, you know, work on that, and then how we will decide how we distribute some of that basalt throughout the islands. That'll be great.
Yeah, definitely. Conservation District will be a key partner in that. We'll be able to pretty quickly come to some decisions about where we might put it on the properties that we own. But really, one of the goals here is to make it available to others. And ultimately, the goal here is not, you know, we recognize we're not going to change the amount of carbon in the atmosphere by ourselves here out on San Juan Island. But this is still relatively new, and being able to do something like this and really publicize it as much as we can. Our hope is that we can turn this into a conventional practice that's used on the mainland, and used to a much, much greater extent than we could ever do it out here.
Okay, I see Mike, Marilyn, and Anne Marie's hands up. So let's start from the left. Mike.
Okay, thank you. All these are great projects, create a lot of questions and a lot of ideas. So the forest thinning efforts, and the education and the work required, you've got lots of kids doing that work and some contractors and some of our folks. Most owners of land that has lots of forest on it don't have those resources. In fact, I would argue that maybe many of them don't even know what they should be doing, you know, how to really thin a forest and what to do with the refuge. Have we thought about providing a service to private owners of forest land to help counsel them on creating a plan to thin their forest successfully? So that's my first thought. I mean, it gets us out there as a supporter of the community, and effectively, I think the fire risk here is concerns of many people. You know, you just look around, and I wonder if publicizing our efforts that you just, you know, through just what you just did, would be a real, because I don't in what do we do kind of definitions, I don't see a lot of a major effort here. Not only is conservation of water, but it's fire safing our islands, and here's what we've done to do that, and here's what we can do to help you do that. So in other words, try to get involved in something like that as an asset. Okay.
I think we can use the property that we have as a great demonstration and get people out and let them see what's going on. The Conservation District does do forest plans for people. And we also have other organizations which come out and do trainings like the Northwest Natural Resources Group. So there are other entities which are working on this, and we're happy to work in partnership with them. I think they're more effective at running those kinds of trainings, and talking to private landowners in particular about what might happen. There are also resources available that they can bring to bear, cost share resources coming out of the state and federal government, which are available for private landowners. So I think there's a lot that can be done. But
so basically, we should start at the Conservation District. If I'm just thinking to myself, you know, I've got probably 20 acres of forest land here that's been accumulating crap for years. And I'd like to thin it out some. I'd like to protect my neighbors and myself as best I can.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And of course, one of the things to remember, people can get carried away with this and rip out lots and lots of vegetation when they don't necessarily have to do that. I mean, thinning trees is one thing. But I think you're right. Showing people a demonstration, training people, particularly contractors, to what they need to do to create healthy forests, rather than just removing as much vegetation as possible, is also something that we need to work on.
You know, one final question. Is there an organization dealing with agriculture that is focused on educating farmers around conservation easements? Because, you know, farmers are folks that are getting older and they're looking, you know, some of them may be looking for exits, and some of them may want to preserve their farm, and we want to preserve the ag. And you know, so I just wondered with the Ag Guild or something like that, could we create a joint program that goes out to educate and maybe increase the number of conservation easements we have on ag land?
Yeah, I think there are various organizations. So certainly the Land Trust Alliance has worked hard on that, and the big Land Trust Alliance participant out here is the San Juan Preservation Trust, and they do a lot of conservation easements on agricultural properties. So they'd be principal, but again, the conservation district does farm plans. I'm sure they're happy to talk to people about the benefits of a conservation easement, and we're available to do that as well. Anyone can call us, and we'll be happy to go out and talk to them about the potential for an easement.
I was just wondering if we could be more progressive, proactive.
Proactive, something to talk about for sure.
Yeah, okay, that's it for me. Thanks.
Marilyn.
Thank you, Brian. Just a couple of things. I love biochar almost more than anything in the world. So I'm really excited that we're doing that instead of just burning the piles. Would love to see the use of kilns so that we become more efficient. So I hadn't heard that we were applying for grants, but I think that's just a terrific move. I assume that we're leaving all the biochar in place in the forests where we burn. We're not exporting it for use in people's gardens or fields, or that's something that other people do. Second comment is well, I was thinking about the fact that our mandate was written in 1990 when we knew about global warming. Jim Hansen had already spoken, but our mandate is not directed at this issue as closely as it might be. So I'm sensitive to public perception of this, the importance of this task. And I personally believe that we all should drop everything and do whatever we can to address the issues of global warming right now for the rest of our lives, because it's the only important thing going on. But I also want to make sure that the public accepts the direction that we believe we need to move. So just a point of educating, and to me this ties in very closely. The health of these lands that we are now stewarding ties so closely into what our mandate is, but we may need to polish a little bit in our messaging is all. And I was curious whether the basalt has been used elsewhere. I think it's a terrific idea. I also can see that some people might say, is it poison? So I'm curious as to what other experience perhaps in Washington State we have that we can refer to. Thanks, Lincoln. This is great work.
Yeah, I don't know honestly about Washington State, whether we've seen any distribution of basalt so far. It definitely has been used in other places, and other types of rocks have been used in other places. They've had some big programs going in the Great Lakes states, where they've been distributing it on really much larger farm field operations. There have been experiments down in California. UC Davis has done some experiments on this. It's really starting to take off, quite honestly. Other types of materials, the glacial flour, quote unquote, which is present at the edge of glaciers. Denmark has a huge amount of this. In Greenland, they've actually been taking that and putting it in on farm fields in tropical areas, because the warmer you get, the more rain you have, the more you're going to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. There's an immense amount happening with all of this, but we're still right on that cusp. And so that's one of the reasons for us to try and do this kind of what people might think is being a bit crazy thing out here in the San Juans. That if we can draw attention to it, we have more basalt than just about any other place. We've got a lot of existing operations, quarry operations, and others that have created these fines that sit around. They're not being utilized for anything. So it's a way of putting those to use. The material is tested. So basalt is quite, there are no issues with basalt in its chemical composition. Other than beneficial, frankly. If the fines are produced with in some other operation, something you need to worry about, but this material is tested. Another big substance we have here is olivine. Got a lot of olivine in this state. That has some issues because of it's got nickel and chromium content. So we're not using olivine in any of this, but that is being applied in other places where they're finding that the concentration of those elements are not exceeding kind of background levels, but still we're avoiding it in this case just because of that reason.
Just one more quick follow-up. I missed the cost of the land bank for this program. It seems to me that the Yale Center was supplying the material, and we will therefore be bearing the cost of application.
We'll bear the cost of application, but the material will be supplied and the barging costs will be covered. So basically, we're going to have a lot of material arrive here, and then we'll have the maybe pleasant problem of figuring out how best to distribute it. But I've had a number of conversations with Colin Huntermer at Public Works. He's been very reassuring about the county's ability to help us at least get the material into some kind of storage area. How we get it to private farmers, we're still kind of making this up as we go along.
But we also are intending to apply it on some of our own properties. Is that not true?
Yes. Yeah. So one of the other, I mentioned the grant application, and I think that probably I haven't gone through that in enough detail, but we did apply to the Paul G. Allen Family Foundation for a grant to do a number of things. And one is to extend our thinning work. The kilns is part of that. Also, this basalt application is something that's part of that grant to try and bring that up to scale. A lot of that grant is focused on the research and monitoring component, because there are still questions which we have about using this, not whether it works. We know it works, but there are questions about how quickly it works, how much carbon dioxide is actually drawn out of the atmosphere over what period of time. And so a big part of this grant is really trying to nail down some of those answers and figure out a big component of that is how efficient it will be. If we can if the costs are huge for maybe less benefit than we'd hoped, then obviously it's going to have limitations for wider application. But our hope is that we'll be able to show that it's quite cost effective and should be used much more widely.
And my final comment, I'm sorry, is that as a member of the communications team or subcommittee, along with Mike and Anne Marie, I'm wondering if there is a public relations aspect to telling the story before the barge arrives, so that we don't have a blockade of the barge or something like that. It seems to me that, it's a fascinating story. I've read about it before you brought it up, but we may want to make sure that we're clear with both preserved neighbors and with the general public what the plan is. Thank you.
Good idea.
Okay, thanks, Marilyn. Anne Marie.
Yeah, I just wanted, I really like this idea, and I wanted to say that I think with the thinning, it would be really prudent for us to do some of the education that we can on site, where we bring some people in and show them and get some news coverage of this, because it will reduce public concern about what we're doing. And then the other thing I wanted to tell you was that we do have a barge area in Deer Harbor if the Lummi Farm was interested. And it's right at the Caillou Marina. And I'm not sure what the capacity is, but there might be some potential there if the Lums were interested in doing some research on their property. So way to go, guys.
We'll see what happens.
Okay. I just have one question, follow up to Marilyn's last comment about the basalt, but more general. Lincoln, this is very good slideshow, a huge and varied amount of information. I'm wondering how you plan to present this to the general public. It's important information for the public to know. We have, I think, 3 members of the public present online at this meeting. So really, we need to put this information out more generally, and as Marilyn suggested, get more public feedback on it.
Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. As I mentioned, I gave this presentation to the League of Women Voters. I'm available to give it to whoever. And I do give variations of it when I'm talking about more general land bank activities to other groups. I did that with the Rotary this week. I'm also planning on giving this talk at the fair and as part of our participation at the fair. But yeah, if you've got ideas about organizations that might be interested in hearing more about this, I'm always available for that.
Well,
So to that point, I mean, I'm not technically on the communications committee, but I check in pretty regularly with Isabella Breda at the Seattle Times, who is part of the, I mean, she obviously covers a lot of Native American, but also they have this climate lab where they got this big grant to do a big focus on climate related stories. And so I'd be happy to, especially because it's novel and it sounds like this may be the first one in the state. It seems like that's ripe for opportunity. And she is I have found her over the past couple of years, I've worked with her to be a very thoughtful reporter. And she just does really, kind of in-depth stories.
Yep.
And I think that kind of publicity on something like this and wrap it in the context of the land bank might be a really great thing. So if you're interested in that, you and I and Tanya could talk offline if you'd like.
Yeah, let's talk about this. I think if we were to get the grant, that certainly is something that we're going to want to do for sure. We don't know when we're going to hear that the Allen Foundation is not terribly forthcoming about that. They say summer, they will let us know. Really hoping for something a little bit more specific, but we'll see what happens. There is a story in the journal this week about this. I did give an interview on it, so that's making its way around.
So this is good. So we have several venues or potential venues. Thanks for that, Amy. Just to follow up, my answer to your question, Lincoln, is that we might find some way to put the presentation online, either by a live video. We have you videoed, now you can make another one, or just a one without video narrative, just a pop-up slideshow type thing. And my suggestion would be to break it up because, as I say, you have a lot of information, several different topic areas. So maybe not everybody is going to be interested in all of them, but it's a whole lot to digest. But good stuff. Thank you. Okay, well, we were running ahead of schedule. And you have another presentation to make.
Yeah, this is gonna be, this will be very quick.
Okay.
So I think we can do
Time
that.
schedule. Let's delay our break and see where we are when you're finished with that.
Yeah,
okay?
this is not gonna take more than 10 minutes or 5 minutes, really. Okay, so going back.
Go ahead, Lincoln.
Yep. All right. Sorry, I always want to show, I'm trying to highlight Bill Anders' photo, obviously. Someone who we owe a lot to, but this is really an important thing for us to think about. But this is it. It's all we've got. This is the planet. We either save it or we don't. So moving on. This is really the crux of this second presentation. We've gone through and analyzed all of the transactions that we have done, all the purchases we've made or donations that we've received since the beginning of the program. And I think that number comes out to about 124. I can't remember the total number of transactions, but we went back through all of them really to look at, what we paid, where we got resources from other places to help cover those costs, what the appraised values were. In some cases, we don't actually have an appraised value. We've used assessed value. For very few cases, we've just used an estimate. But we do have the results of this analysis pretty much complete. And I'm happy to share those tables with you. I've got two different spreadsheets, one for conservation easements and one for outright acquisitions. But this is the summary, and you've seen this slide before. It's a little bit different as we've gone through this analysis over and over again and really ironed out any questions that we might have had about particular transactions. But here it is. In terms of outright acquisitions, the story is that the appraised value of those purchases was about 87.6 million. And what we paid, the total purchase price, and it's not just, we didn't pay all of this. We found other resources to help cover these costs, but the total purchase price was about 83 million. So under appraised value in general. When you think about what our expenditures have been toward this, it's 49 million. So obviously we've been really quite successful in getting partners, getting grants to help cover the costs of these acquisitions, and really trying to save San Juan County residents as much money as we can. We're trying to find resources from wherever we can, whatever the partner is or grant is, to make these things happen. And so looking across there, you can see total partner contributions, 53 million. That does include assists on other projects. So for example, we've helped other agencies acquire properties, and been in the middle of those transactions or sparked them. And that's also thrown into the mix here, but really good. Really, it's fun to see how much money we've been able to bring in addition to what we've used in terms of REIT funding. So that's the total. When you look also at the conservation easement line, so the bottom part of this table, you can see the appraised value there, what we spent. It's been a little harder to find partners on those conservation easement projects. It's hard to get grants or other partners when we're doing a conservation easement. It's much easier if we're making an outright acquisition. We have had a lot of conservation easement donations. We don't really have a precise figure on that because we don't always know the value of the conservation easement donation, but I think that $5 million estimate is pretty low, honestly. So totaling all of that up, this is the final picture. And again, you know, this question arose because there have been some assertions made about us paying too much for property, us not doing things properly, whatever the narrative happens to be. This is the reality, that we've really done a pretty good job of keeping our costs down, a very good job of finding other resources to help us do our mission a lot better and at the lowest possible cost to the taxpayer. And that is what I've got. So I'm going to stop there.
Great. Good information, Lincoln. It should hopefully put that misinformation to rest. So again, any questions, comments from commissioners? Good. Okay. Peggy.
I just want to commend Lincoln on that chart, because I think it speaks volumes about our efforts to really extend the money that we have as far as possible, and the strength of our partnership relationship. So that's really great. And I wonder if there's another way to put it out that makes it really easy for people. I mean, I think it says it, so maybe we don't need it, but anyway, good job.
Mike.
Yeah, I would, thank you. I would suggest that we do put that out, but I wouldn't put that whole slide out. I think there's like 3 or 4 numbers in there that are important. One is, you know, we bought property worth 80 some odd million dollars, and we only spent 43 million of REIT. But through our efforts, we were able to accumulate the rest of the funds to make those acquisitions. Did not come out of the REIT, did not come out of taxes, presumably. And because I think that has to be an argument that we are an organization that not only do we spend residential tax monies very prudently, but also are the leverage to bring together other organizations to make all this happen. And, you know, 3 or 4 numbers says it all. The rest of it can get a bit confusing, and we lose the message. Yeah. Good job. I failed to do this often enough, but I think, Lincoln, you're doing a superb job on this stuff. And the fact that you're getting out and doing some speaking things and the like is going to make a big difference. I commend you.
Thanks, Mike.
I'll just say I agree with you, Mike, on all counts. Good job. Could be a little simpler. Yeah. Thanks. Anybody else? Okay. Let's it would be good to have a break because Peter has a presentation coming up. Shall we take a let's say a 7-minute break until 10 o'clock? And if everybody agrees, since we're all online, agree to extend the meeting by 10 or 15 minutes if we need to. We have consensus. Does everybody agree on that? Good.
Yeah.
Okay. See you back at 10 o'clock.
You guys are on top of it there on Orcas. Still thinking about basalt. So for outreach, I think most of it is in the stewardship report. It's just, you know, we've got a lot of events coming up. We will start with the Camp Eagle Rock, which is a summer camp here on San Juan Island, and they meet at the elementary school, which is maybe less than 1/8 of a mile from our office. So we'll take advantage of one of their activities they call Walking Wednesday. And on Wednesday mornings, they will walk down to Driggs Park, and we'll do little conservation education activities during their camp, which is, I believe, 7 weeks. The first Wednesday is the 26th. And Margot will be leading a few of those. And then there's a couple where they'll go to the Whale Museum. And Jackson Beach is one for nurdle hunts. So that was fun to put together. And I'm working on still the Nature RX and Nature Prescription series with local public health officials to lead a themed walk. We're still kind of in the planning stages for that, but should kick off in July, looking at the third Thursday evenings. So people can take a short walk and hear some of the health benefits, depending on what the different medical providers would like to talk about. And other than that, prepping for the fair and upcoming other openings when Lindy/Beaverton Marsh Preserve Trail, I think they've named that Redtail Hawk Trail. And that'll open with a target date of August 3rd, that first Saturday in August. And then we'll have the opening in September of North Shore. So trying to keep up with all of it. And all the good suggestions that come out of the meetings. Peggy, you've got a question?
Is there a list of all of the different outreach events? I think I saw Amanda had listed some things that I didn't actually see on the calendar yet. And I want to just make sure that we really have a really robust outreach here also on Lopez. There's lots happening on Orcas for sure. And on San Juan, I just want to make sure we really, really kind of get things set up for people to get out on the sites here on Lopez as well.
Yeah, Amanda's got walks and work parties and farmers market. And then as we pop other things in as they work for the schedule, but you should have a list. I'll resend it. I have the master list of all the events for all 3 districts that I keep an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, I'm kind of passing on a request from somebody else as well. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Tanya, I have been seeing a lot of both our email blast and media announcements of our meetings and volunteer events and other events. So you're doing a great job of that. I'm always glad to see them and share them on Facebook and so on. Also the stewardship report. I mean, lots and lots of really interesting activities and great pictures. So whenever I see all those pictures, I think, wow, we should share that with everybody. And I know you have been some of them, but keep doing it. Great job.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else before we go to the stewardship report? All right, let's do it. Stewardship, let's see. We have a presentation on the draft Crescent Beach Preserve Management Plan. But before that, let's see. Do we have any other stewards here? I think they've all disappeared who want to present on their activities. Anything else?
I think our stewardship component is sitting in the room there on Orcas this time around. Otherwise, they're out in the field or.
We're here, and Peter and Aaron are going to present on the Crescent Beach Preserve Management Plan updated.
Yeah, just to clarify, I think I gave Brian the impression that I was actually going to offer a presentation, and I was intending to just provide an update on some Orcas activities, including the management plan. But I'll start with North Shore Preserve. You probably all saw that we hosted a meeting over here on June 12th to kind of just provide a general update of progress at the preserve and also share the final design plans for the property. And we had a small but engaged audience there. There was a fire station, and there was a lot of support expressed for the project and for the opening. One of the topics we addressed or covered in the presentation was our intention to seek no parking status along Glenwood Inn Road as a way of kind of protecting all the resources along that road, wetlands and old forests along the edge that would get impacted if cars were parking off the shoulder. Managing use levels maintaining emergency vehicle access and just generally preventing chaos on that road once the preserve opens. There's very strong support in the neighborhood for that move. And at the meeting, there was an expression of support from everybody in the audience, no opposition to it. So Lincoln is working to get that on the county council agenda for consideration this summer. And my hope is that we'll get approval to do that and get signs on that road before we open the preserve. The pre-bid meeting was yesterday. We put out a request for bids to about 80 contractors, local and mainland contractors. Had 7 contractors show up, which was really great, in my opinion, on a short timeline. We had 5 local contractors and 2 mainland contractors, and I expect we'll get 3 or 4 bids out of that. A lot of good questions on the site, which is always helpful to refine our final request. So I'm going to send out an updated bid sheet today. The bids are due next week, and we'll make a decision hopefully by July 5th and try to get that project going by mid-August. And because of permitting uncertainty, particularly around the wetland side of the work, we split the project into 2 phases. Phase 1 is everything but the wetland work. So parking lot construction, road rerouting, trail, road to trail conversion, a lot of earthwork, removing the foundation from the house that we burned this year. If we were to get the wetland permits in time, we could do phase 2 this summer, which is basically regrading the 2 areas, the pond, restoring that to a wetland, and regrading the area surrounding the house, which is wetlands, into a more natural wetland topography. If that doesn't happen this summer, we're going to do that next summer in August probably, and we would just close the preserve briefly for that. So still on track to open it in late September. There's a lot to do between now and then. The Preservation Trust Summer Social is happening before we, start doing any construction. But Tyler's done a great job of cleaning up the site for that, mowing things, and we've taken a lot of junk out of there last minute. So that's all going quite well. As Brian mentioned, the Crescent Beach Management Plan was out for a month for public comment. Aaron summarized the public comments and did a great job with that. And we have presented the final draft in this month's commission packet for approval. And, as you know, the plan was focused heavily on the forestry work that we're planning. And that is grant funded work through DNR, Department of Natural Resources, about 240,000. We had originally requested 300. They were asked to reduce the ask, so it's 240,000, which is 100% contracted funds. So it's basically going straight from DNR to a contractor. So we're going to do a bid process this fall sometime. But before that, we've scheduled a couple of meetings. Next Friday at 5 p.m. here at the library will be a hybrid meeting to provide an overview of our proposed plans, which are still forming. The grant application was, somewhat vague about thinning broadly in the parts of the preserve that required thinning, and then creating a shaded fuel break along the existing trail. And that was informed by the forest assessment that Rain Shadow Consulting did in 2022. So they did all the forested Orcas preserves under one contract, did forest assessments, and Crescent Beach sort of rose to the top as a place where we should work soon, along with a few other places, parts of Turtleback, for example, which we're already working on. But the first meeting will be here, as they said, and then we'll have a meeting the next day, Saturday, the 29th at 10 a.m., which is a walk through the preserve to kind of actually look at the conditions in the forest. And, maybe the same people will come to both. Maybe there'll be some who like a field meeting and others like an office meeting. But our idea is to just get the word out soon and get any feedback we can, then refine our plans based on that feedback. Then sometime this fall, have the DNR staff out here to do some field marking, and then start as early as January of 2025. So there's, it's a very popular walking preserve. I receive emails several times a month from people that walk it regularly with questions or comments about things happening in there. So I know there are a lot of people that are pretty engaged in the site, and this work would cause some disruption. We'd have to do some closures, but most of the work would happen, maybe all the work would happen in the winter season, outside of the bird nesting season, outside of the main, heavy use time. So that the timing would be good. Aaron is going to play a big role in implementing this project. It's going to be, a lot of activity over a fairly short time, and it's going to require all of our attention. But I think it's really great. It's nice to be able to move forward on something like that. But looking forward to hearing from the public on that. Anything to add?
I think also, there's the recreation component. It's also in proximity, has some significant cultural resource values. So we've had some meetings, and we'll make sure we are mindful about ground disturbance.
I have reached out to a cultural resources consultant, and they have it on their schedule to finish that work before the fall. So we have to contract for that. I'm waiting for a proposal from them, but this will ensure that we can operate freely and not have impacts on a known archaeological site and other potential areas that we haven't explored. We've never done a comprehensive cultural resources assessment of the property, so that'll be nice to have that done before we get in there and do any work. And but in any case, we're going to focus on minimizing ground disturbance, minimizing disturbance generally, and try to focus the work in areas that are dense, small, unhealthy trees. Some of the forests on the preserve are actually in really great shape that we won't really need to do anything there. Okay. I'd like to have a question or a comment.
Yep. Yeah. Now a comment. Couple of things. First of all, I think this is a great opportunity on the forest management side to create a demonstration project, since you're right next to East Sound. Should be really helpful and showing people exactly what we're talking about when we're doing these projects. I also wanted to mention that there has been some significant outreach to tribes, and there was a meeting. Sorry, my phone's going off. You guys had a meeting, which I don't know if you wanted to just update people on the tribal outreach part of this.
Aaron?
Sure, we sent letters to tribes in collaboration with the cultural coordinator at the county, Frankie. So it just provided updates on both Crescent Beach and Watmow, our planning process, kind of our general scope of work. And we met with Lummi, as well as Stillaguamish, and also followed up with Samish regarding questions about activities, and have gotten some good considerations.
So those 3 tribes have responded to your sharing the plan?
Right. We didn't share the entire plan. We shared project overviews.
Okay.
Yeah, so happy to share the letter that we sent out.
Maybe you can share a little bit with us about what their responses were.
Sure. Ground disturbance in both areas, I think both of these sites are culturally significant. And so ground disturbance related to that at Crescent Beach, it was wanting to know more about what was there, since we hadn't done an extensive. And just wanting to clarify that, we're flush cutting stumps. This is non-commercial. We're going to work on chipping. Let's see, in regards to Watmow, yeah, just the shell midden site, and wanting to protect that from ground disturbance in general. I'm trying to think of my notes otherwise. Yeah, I think that probably sums it up.
So basically, we have done what we should be doing in terms of sharing those plans and opportunities with them. Basically, an invitation to know what we're doing and to provide feedback and collaborate.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Good, thank you, Aaron.
And I do want to add that, there's been talk over the years and actually efforts by the county to replace the culvert that goes under Crescent Beach Drive, which is a small culvert that limits intertidal exchange. And I'm going to make sure that we also focus on that area in the cultural resources assessment, because at some point that work's going to need to be done, and we should find out, what limitations there might be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the plan has gone out to the public in written form. We've received, I think, 4 comments, basically, which commissioners you should have in your packet. You should have seen. Anything you want to add on those?
No, I think we received good comments, both about the forestry work and a request to focus more on the tidelands. We made some revisions. Aaron did that for the most part, and I think it's a good plan.
Yeah.
It's straightforward, and there's some projected costs in there. We didn't know at the time with certainty that we would get grant funds, but that will cover a large percentage of the funding that is needed. And
Yeah. I think some of the comments were a bit on the global side, and
right.
your responses were extremely appropriate and good.
thanks.
So commissioners, you've all seen and read a couple of iterations of the plan. Any questions or comments for Peter and Aaron? No? See, hi, Tim.
Oh, you're muted, Tim.
Okay, there we go. I'd just like to say that I really appreciated the summary comments at the end, and most especially your responses to them to get it out into the public and actually further educate the public at the same time while answering their questions. So very well done.
Thank you, Tim. We actually did that for Richardson Marsh to do it with our plans, but it didn't make it into the packet. So
Okay.
keep doing it.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, I'll ask for a motion for approval, and this was not listed as on the agenda as an action item. It should have been. That's partly my fault, because I reviewed the agenda, but we should have listed it as an action item, but we will take action. So I will ask for a motion to approve.
I would make a motion to approve the Crescent Beach Management Plan as written.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve the Crescent Beach Management Plan? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're ahead of schedule again.
I could offer a few things
Oh, okay.
related to stewardship beyond.
Sure.
Great. Well, just that we're working on 2 grant applications for this potential acquisition on Orcas, and after the meeting, we'll meet with one of the grant managers to go out to the property and follow up on a few questions. Lincoln and I met yesterday with kind of a steering committee of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan update. So it's an older plan, I think 2013. The Conservation District has hired a consultant to help us update the plan. It's got a variety of components, including project areas that are of priority. So looking at those homeowner associations and the landscape and helping to rank that. Some of our preserves were in a former list, but this update also will poise everyone more or less to be more competitive with grant funding. The goal is to have it, I think, in draft by the end of the year. And there'll be public outreach related to wildfire, forest health, etc., as a part of this plan. Well, as a part of the update for the original plan. So, yeah, and other than that, working away on the Watmow Preserve Management Plan.
Okay. Question on the wildfire management plan, Erin. That is a county plan?
Yeah, protection plan, yeah.
And it's being headed up in environmental stewardship?
No, the Conservation District has taken the lead on providing an update to the plan.
So it's not a county plan. I mean, it's a county-wide plan, but not being done under the auspices of San Juan County?
I mean, it'll focus county-wide and it'll cover county lands, engage all the fire districts, as well as, you know, other suppression forces like DNR, federal land managers, state, all the different landowners. So, does that answer your question, or?
I
Maybe
think
I
so.
could say,
I
okay.
think so, yeah,
Okay.
since our fire districts are local and not county-wide, I guess that makes sense. Didn't occur to me. My other question is, are they having a risk assessment done as part of that plan?
Yeah, well, we will, or the consultant will engage some fire modeling to help inform risk.
Computer modeling?
Yeah.
Good, okay, that's essential. Peter?
I just wanted to add one thing. There were a number of comments or questions from commissioners about, you know, the land bank's role in forest management, et cetera. Gene Phillips, who manages the forest health program for DNR, I think he represents 5 Western Washington counties. He told me the other day that 60% of their staff time and budget is going into the islands, into San Juan County. And that's been focused primarily on private landowners, you know, forest thinning projects, and, you know, they're channeling funding and staff time to San Juan County, 60% of their time thus far. And then there was another comment about demonstration projects. You know, I think our role is fairly limited and, you know, limited to our preserves, but we did do forest demonstration projects on Turtleback a couple of years ago to show folks what it would look like to do this stuff on a bigger scale. And I'm trying to figure out if we could do something like that this fall at Crescent Beach, small scale, you know, to give folks a preview of that work. But yeah.
I think just to follow up on that,
Yeah.
Because I heard Mike talk a little bit about that as well. Yeah, I've been passing out that information about the cost share program for DNR to all the conservation easement owners that we monitor, and have seen quite a few take it up. So yeah, we're step on the ground there.
Given the fact of how much private land, how much land is private in the county, and the fact of how the conservation district is focusing on that, I'll be interested to follow and see the land bank's role and how much of a role we have, and how much we figure, so to speak, in the countywide plan. How that influences our plans. Peggy, I see your hand up. And you're muted.
Yep, there we go. Couple questions, Erin, since you're here. I would love to hear your a little bit about the conversations with the Stillaguamish and Lummi tribes out at Watmow.
Yeah, so protection of the shell midden. some emphasis on how the shoreline is this important intersection, for cultural resources. So, you know, I think we provided more of a briefing on what was the scope of activities and got feedback on, yeah, so one specific example, and I can also offline share some of the documentation and such, but you know, there's the design to or the project to rip up the sport court, this concrete pad. We received feedback that you know, wanting an archaeologist to be present during that, and also wanting it to be capped with sterile soil. So that's one specific example of kind of how to be mindful with ground disturbance. Little bit of talking about kind of that trail going right over the Shellman and long-term mowing that. And so, and then with the Stillaguamish, there was other interest also in tribal access opportunities. Yeah.
And so how are we responding to the access issue? Because I know the Samish have also wanted access. Curious to know how we're going to navigate that one.
Yeah, I don't think I have an answer for you right now. I think that's part of what we're gonna work through in the management plan, at least the draft, and I think it'll be a adaptive process as we learn more and hear more from people. So
Amy.
Yeah, thanks. Great questions, Peggy. Hi, Erin. Thanks for that helpful information. And I apologize if I missed it, is what you just sort of talked about the kind of, or are you taking that feedback and you'll put it in a draft plan? I'm just thinking about between me and my TIPO schedule and all of the, we're now being asked the TIPOs to review like all of the Climate Commitment Act grants the past couple of months. So it's been just this crazy fire hose, and particularly for her. So if I had like a 1 or 2 page, like here's some of the things we've heard kind of summary that I could take to her with the site, if that's something that you have or something that would not take very much time, I think that could really be helpful. And then I'm pretty sure JoJo would be interested in.
yeah, I can send that to you.
Okay.
It's similar to how the public comments are organized in this packet. So
great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question about Whatnot too. This is not on the native subject, but I read, and I think it was in the stewardship report, a mention of an investigation into the feasibility of moving the cabin off, which surprised me a little bit. Amanda has signed off, but maybe Erin, can you talk about that a little more? Since that was an important community value.
Yeah, and you know, Peggy and Tim, please feel free to share your reflections as well. So our last scoping meeting, I think we got about 7 comments. Curious about the feasibility. I think some of that relates to how that old house could be an attractant, and so you know, considerations for becoming a heavy use area, or also the house is in pretty bad shape, right? So investments related to, do we keep up an old house that no one can live in? And anyway, so long story short, as part of the management plan process, it seems to be, you know, wanting to actually put numbers to what we're talking about, if at all possible. So it was just a preliminary site visit by the Nichols brothers to see if it was at all feasible, what that cost looks like. And, you know, this is all something that would be not, I think, immediately decided on or proposed in the management plan that we're gonna be putting out fairly soon for review from y'all. But at least having some numbers associated and the range of options, right? So,
You're researching potential alternatives and options.
yeah, and we wouldn't, you know, I think we would completely bring this back to the community and recognize that there's passion, and that there's gonna be some level of decision that people will have to make around.
Okay.
And also I think us as, or y'all, since you do the budget, you know, what we're looking at in terms of long-term costs.
Good. So that will be further discussed in the management plan.
Yeah,
discussions.
and probably beyond, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I guess I would just wanna confirm with Peggy and Tim that is accurate for y'all since Amanda's not here.
I was just looking through the notes from the public meeting on that, and what you said is entirely accurate. There were a number of people who thought that the house should be moved. And so it was worth looking into that option. On the other hand, there were also people who emphatically wanted it preserved on site. So it's just covering all the bases.
Yeah, and I don't know, Lincoln, also if it was ever mentioned as, I mean, I think some of our grants are really focused on the cultural and the ecological conservation values, so wanting, I think, to focus, you know, on those priorities as well, but definitely engage the community and.
Basic information to answer those questions still coming in.
Thank you, that's a nice summary.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you.
So
Amy?
Aaron, thanks for all the work on that. And I'll be really curious to hear what Nickel Brothers has to say. Because the house issue is a big one, both pro and con. Move it to the village, which seems a little unrealistic. Leave it there as kind of the only really remaining example of settler and indigenous home site. So, and I don't know where the Historical Society is at this point in terms of partnering. I haven't checked in with Amy. But were they privy at all to any of those conversations?
Conversations with the
Well,
trust.
Historical Society.
Historical Society. No, in terms of the house.
Which conversations about the house?
Well, we can check in on it later.
Okay.
Nickel
Yeah.
Brothers but more relevant is where are they right now at this point in terms of partnering with us? Because they were looking into some grants as well.
Yeah, there's a variety of feedback we've gotten on that. You know, obviously being on the register would make us competitive for grants. And we're not, so yeah, lots to talk about there.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Aaron and Peter. So before we go into our second public comment period, any further comments from the commissioners on anything? Okay, guess we've exhausted ourselves. So I will then ask for, we do have members of the public. Second public comment period. We have a member of the public on, a couple of members of the public online. And Kathy Morris is here sitting at the table with us in person.
Hey, I know, it's too bad the ferry didn't come this morning. I have just some little bit of something of just an idea, and as far as the agriculture summit that's coming, not up, but it will be early March or end of February. And this idea of education, I'm on the committee for the Egg Summit. So I was just thinking, listening to the comments here about the education, all those things, if you guys would be interested in putting together a group for a land bank roundtable as one of our sessions. You know, a lot of the people that come to these meetings are, you know, supporters and praisers, and it's kind of, yeah. And I just feel like if you immerse yourselves in a sea of landowners, it might be a really productive conversation, might be a little difficult, but also might be a really good opportunity to express yourselves and amongst critics, if you will, but then come to some real moving forward ideas. I don't know, just like I really like roundtables, and especially when people are in person. And so, I mean, no decisions have to be made, but I just wanted to put that seed out there. I know Peggy's helping a little bit with the Egg Summit, and I am as well. And I think the land bank's an important part of our agriculture community here on Orcas, on Salmon County. So that's what my comment is.
Great. Thank you, Kathy, for that invitation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a formal invitation, it's just an idea, it's a germination. It will have to come from both sides, but as a way, the theme this year is something about setting the table. And so I just feel like roundtables are.
As you know, the commission has an agricultural subcommittee. So the subcommittee can discuss that, and I guess anybody who has an interest can get back to Kathy as a member of the ag board.
Yeah. I'm just a committee member on the Egg Summit. I mean, it's not like I have a real title, I'm just a volunteer.
Okay.
So,
Thanks for that, Kathy.
Yeah.
Tanya, I see your hand up, but first I want to just make sure there are no other public comments.
I have a public comment from the chat for you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It is from Tracy Cottingham, who had a comment earlier, but she wasn't sure if she'd be back on.
Can you speak up a little closer?
Me?
Yeah.
God, no one ever tells me I'm too quiet, sorry. So Tracy's comment was, per Marilyn's comment, to advise the public ahead of the Yale test for using basalt on San Juan County farms, that just today, Tracy saw a very good article that shows how a climate resiliency test can really backfire, and she'll forward the article from Hakai Magazine blog. Everyone should read it. That is her comment. So I guess we'll be looking for, or I'll be looking for a link, and I will forward that to the commission once I receive it.
Good. Thanks, Tanya, and thank you, Tracy. Okay, any others from commissioners or members of the public? Okay, hearing none, I think we have done our business. Actually, something that we don't have on the agenda and should, any future agenda items that any commissioners would like to discuss or have discussed? Nothing now. Okay. Well, if anybody has future agenda items, Peggy.
My ongoing topic of hunting.
Yes.
And I'd love an update on any kind of conversations we're having with BLM about how to kind of further address the issue of hunting on adjoining lands.
You may get a.
That seems to have
right now.
held up.
Aaron, do you have something?
Yeah, so we talked with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and Bree, and we're working on creating at least a calendar this year where we'll have more staff presence from DFW, BLM, as well as ourselves during those critical points. And DFW is also going to work with us on putting out some more better education materials prior to hunting season. So at least public education and then more presence at Watmau is on the schedule this year.
That's great news. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it'd be helpful for the public to know about that too, because there are a lot of people still kind of questioning what's happening.
Yeah, I think, we're trying to sign up for dates and work with the press, outreach folks at DFW, and hopefully at least by the fair, we'll have, us something set to share.
Good, thanks so
Is-
much.
I'll to answer your question for now, or would you like to have that continue to be put on the agenda?
Was that a question for me? What was that?
Yeah, I asked if that answered your question for now, or if you'd like that to remain on future agendas.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So just a request to staff on future agendas, I would like to see that standard item for future agenda requests. And I would also like to see an itemization on the agenda of items for discussion and items for approval, just so it's clear to all of us and to the public. Okay, if there's nothing else, I thank you all, and we will adjourn the meeting until our July meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Bye all.
Take care.